Ladies and gentlemen, in 2002 and again in 2006, the citizens of Minnesota elected Tim Pawlenty governor. And he has been the best that the members, the soldiers and airmen of the Minnesota National Guard and the veterans of this state could hope for. It is my very great, that's true. It is my very great honor to introduce the Commander-in-Chief of the Minnesota National Guard, the Honorable Tim Pawlenty.
Good morning and thank you. A smaller group of family and colleagues had a chance to gather in the governor's reception room prior to this larger and more formal gathering this morning. We had a chance to reflect upon a number of things, but we had a chance also to reflect upon the portrait that hangs in the governor's reception room. It depicts, of course, the scene from the Battle of Gettysburg, where the Minnesota 1st played that historic and heroic role at the Battle of Gettysburg. They were called forward to plug the hole in the line and to block a charge from the opposing forces. They prevailed, but they did so with enormous sacrifice and incredible loss of life. And I share that story with you because our Minnesota National Guard, as you know, has its lineage in the Minnesota 1st, but it also has its lineage in the values and traditions and virtues of not just the Minnesota 1st, but service to the United States of America in our military. That service is important for a whole variety of reasons, and I'll reflect on that more in just a moment. But I want to express gratitude to a number of people today for what brings us here today. I'd first like to express gratitude to Colonel Morris for the benediction, for the invocation, I should say, and expressing gratitude to God. I think that's an important and appropriate way to start the ceremony. Thank you, Chaplain, for that. I want to thank the Screening Committee for their hard work and diligence in screening the applicants for Adjutant General, and for bringing us General Nash as the recommended candidate. We appreciate their work, and many of the members are here. Some could not be, but we recognize and appreciate them as well. I want to thank General Shelito and Yvonne Shelito, who join us this morning. They have served our state and our nation for many decades with incredible diligence and incredible effectiveness. We are grateful to you for the role that you have played in making the Minnesota National Guard the best National Guard in the United States of America. Thank you, General Shelito. But as good as these generals and other military leaders are, I think it's also important, really important, most important, to reflect upon the thoughts of one very famous general when he said, essentially, that a general is only as good as the soldiers who are serving underneath that general. And in Minnesota's case, and in the case of our country, the reason we have the finest military in the world is because we have the finest members of the military in the world. And day in and day out, we certainly appreciate the leadership of the generals and the other leaders. They're important. But we wouldn't have this type of military in Minnesota or in the United States without the day-to-day work of all the other men and women who have served now and throughout history, many of whom are with us in the balcony and otherwise today. You are heroes. You represent our values and our virtues of strength and duty and courage and honor and service and patriotism and commitment. You personify that, you reflect that. We recognize we wouldn't have the country we have without each and every one of you. And I want to thank you for your service and thank you for wearing the uniform and saying you're willing to step forward because the country needs you. And we honor your service and we honor your commitment to our country. Thank you to each and every one of you. And as to General Nash, I want to just reflect upon his career to date, and he's got a lot of road yet ahead of him. But we want to make sure that we recognize and celebrate the tradition of the citizen soldier as well. Over 80% of the Minnesota National Guard is comprised of men and women who have other careers, and they serve in the National Guard in addition to those other professions or places of employment or careers. And General Nash is deeply steeped in that tradition. He's an individual who, first of all, is a family man and somebody who you might know has children, but also grandchildren, and spends a great deal of time in his commitment and perspective living up to that obligation, and does it with great love and care. He also has served 38 years of his life in the military. As General Sieben mentioned earlier, it was at all levels. He started that service by being drafted into the U.S. Army in 1972. He was commissioned as a second lieutenant in 1976, and he subsequently served as a traditional guardsman, in other words, a citizen soldier, for over the next 30 years. He's commanded units at all levels, including the 2nd Battalion, 135th Infantry, 1st Brigade Combat Team, the 34th Infantry Division. He's been a special assistant to the combatant commander at NORTHCOM, and he's also commanded 2 major deployments, one in Bosnia in 2003 and 2004, and Mary and I saw him there and had a chance to see his work firsthand. He was the commanding general of the multinational brigade in Bosnia, and then he also commanded in Iraq in 2009, 2010, was the commander of the United States Division South. And this was one of the few times in the modern history of the country where a leader from the National Guard was given command and control responsibilities over the entire military operations, both for the reserve component and the active component in a war setting, and that was the southern provinces of Iraq. And I had a chance to visit him there as well and see his leadership and his service in that context. But as it was also mentioned, he has served in the private sector. He had 32 years of successful business experience, extremely successful business experience, including being awarded 10 patents, which reflects certain other capability and talent that we admire and respect as well. So he really embodies and personifies what we know to be true about the reserves and the National Guard and the military more broadly. This is a person who's been successful and could be successful in lots of walks of life, but has chosen to step forward and say, I will serve my state and I will serve my nation because they need me. And I think we all recognize that we are blessed to live in this great country. It's a great country for lots of different reasons, but the main reason it's a great country is because it's the freest country the world has ever known. And we know that history has taught us that there are certain individuals, certain groups, and at times nations that would like to challenge the security interests or the freedoms of the United States of America, sometimes abroad, sometimes at home. And in those moments, we hope they can be prevented and resolved through diplomacy and peaceful means in all occasions, but we know they can't always be. And in those moments, it's really important that we have brave men and women who are willing to stand up and say, we will confront that threat, and if need be, we'll put it down. And that comes at a great cost. For them, it means, at least for a time, and maybe for a longer period of time, they have to set aside their family commitments, their community commitments, their commitments at their place of worship back home, their recreational pursuits, and all of the other enjoyments and opportunities of life. But they do that not just out of duty and courage and strength and service and patriotism and honor and valor. They do that out of love and generosity for this country and for their fellow citizens. And so we recognize those strong words of service that I just mentioned. But what these men and women really do is one of the most generous and loving acts that somebody can give to another, which is to say, I will give everything I have, including, if need be, laying down my life for this cause as an act of commitment to my fellow citizens and my country. It's an incredibly courageous act, but it's also an incredibly loving and generous act. And there are no words that a governor or a member of Congress or a president can say that can fully recognize and reward that commitment. But our words and our deeds need to do the best possible at supporting that, not just through speeches, but in the halls of Congress, in the halls of the state capitol, in the halls of city councils and organizations all over this country, to make sure when we say we support our troops, it's not just a slogan, but it's also backed up with the policies and programs and support in government, in community, in places of worship, in the chambers of commerce and places of business all across this nation, that our deeds and our words in that regard match up and live up to each other. And Minnesota has done a great job in that regard, and I'm very proud of our state on a bipartisan basis that has been the case through the Beyond the Yellow Ribbon program and many other initiatives. I know and trust that will continue in these coming years because Minnesotans recognize these virtues and these values and these fine men and women, and they're also fully supportive of those initiatives. I want to close by just saying on behalf of First Lady Mary Pawlenty and me, one of the great privileges of our lives has been the opportunity to associate with the men and women who serve in the military here in Minnesota and beyond. And we recognize that our role has been to lend voice and support and lead, but our efforts in that regard pale in comparison to the commitment and the strength and the valor and the importance and the love and the generosity that you have given and continue to give to our state and to our nation. And we just want to say on behalf of Minnesota once again, we appreciate you, we respect you, you are our heroes. General Nash is going to reflect that in his leadership, and I am 100% confident that he assumes the role of Adjutant General, that our Minnesota National Guard will remain the best National Guard in this country, because everything I just described is reflected in General Nash, not just in his words, but in his record, in the way he's lived his life, the way he has led, the way he has served, and he's going to be a fabulous Adjutant General for the Minnesota National Guard. Thank you for coming this morning, and thank you for all your service.